All right. So we're
Let's just the famous words of Bill. Let's just
let's
start.
just
Screw
start.
it.
We this is one of those we're not sure where this is going to go because um, obviously we want to talk about disciple making, but we keep coming back to the same, and maybe it's just what we're dealing with and struggling with. You know, uh, not just me personally or you personally, but a lot of different people are have been talking about and exhibiting um, confidence in corporate or institutional thinking. Um, how would you say it?
I think it's good.
Yeah. Um, and I and here's my
We're gonna
I'm
try to be nice.
huh?
I'm gonna try to be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think we're trying to be mean. It's just
No.
I think we're just blunt. I think that's the problem. It's we're just really, really um, we don't mince words about it. I think we've gotten over the mincing words of it. But the one thing I don't want to come across and keep coming across is like I hate the institutional church or the people in it or the people running it. I don't have any animosity toward them whatsoever. I actually had somebody ask me yesterday, and I think I may have told you this when we talked yesterday. That somebody asked me, said, "Are you ordained? Are you an ordained
Yeah. Yeah.
minister?" And I said, "No, no." And they said, "Well, do you want it? Are you wanting to be ordained?" And I'm like, "No, no, not at all." And they're like, they're confused. They're like, "Well, why not?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not. It's just not that important to me. In fact, it's because I'm just a regular guy, working a job." And I told him, I was honest with him. I said, I've been in pastor positions, as far as the title, volunteer staff, never paid. Nobody ever got to the point where they want to pay me, but not that I was not that I care now, but at one time I did. Um, but um, it's just not. It's actually a reduction for me. So
Well, and let's think about. Excuse me. Let's think about like years ago for me. When I was like called, um, and I wrestle with that all the time. Not that I wonder if it was from God or not. That's not what I wonder, but it was for me. It was the hoops.
yeah,
Like we talked about. This is the only avenue that I really knew for something like I guess you would say a Christian leader, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher idea that, of course, is biblical. Paul talks about that. We're not, but for me, the only way I saw that early on, of course, was through the institution.
right.
And my background's Methodist, and Methodists are not even today Methodist, but back then Methodist. Not a lot of emphasis on gospel, but not even a lot of emphasis on rule and leadership. And so I didn't know anything. And the only thing I knew is God had put something in my heart to be a not to be a leader of people with the message of His gospel. And if I could go all the way back and do it again, I'm not saying I wouldn't jump through the hoops of institutionalism to get where I am, where, I am a pastor, I am ordained. I've probably done 50 weddings, maybe more, God help me. And I enjoy that. I know that's a part of what I do well,
Mm-hmm.
and God's gifted me to do that well. But going back to your point and going back to what I would encourage people to do now, even my boys or boy that has expressed some interest in institutionalism,
Right.
I highly encourage them to get busy doing what they feel like God wants them to do where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't necessarily go to a church to get busy, although that's probably some good places to start. But again, it goes back to this ball. We keep rolling it around, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We've been rolling. This is conversation 9, and it seems like everything comes back to the institution. And it's not that we want to. I don't want to burn it anymore. I
No.
did. We talked about that. My zeal got the best of me at times, and I love the people in it, but I don't like what the system does. And to your point, you and I are. It's not that I wanted to be ordained. It's not that it was like I didn't know. I was like, I know what I need to do. I need to be a pastor, and
Right.
I'm thinking, well, how do I become a pastor? Well, you jump through this, you do this, you do that. And did I really have to do that? Is my question.
You know,
And your question, and like for you though, it's different.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, it is a little bit different. But do you? So that brings back while you were talking, and I was listening. It wasn't like I was just listening so I could get ready to talk, but you know, uh, but I'm
I know
kind of
what you mean. I do it a lot. I know
and,
what you mean.
and I know a lot of people give me, I've had people give me crap about that. Like, you're not listening. You're just listening to respond.
Sounds like something your wife would say because that sounds like what my wife would say. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's all good.
Anyway, I won't say who said it. Anyway, but my point was, um, is we have this perception, and the perception is if I'm going to be really, really productive, then I've got to be the guy in the pulpit. I've got to have a ministry. I've got to have some vehicle that I can drive to get me where I need to go, right? And it's just not the case. You being being in the institution, being the guy in the institution does not necessarily mean you're going to be more productive. Okay, it may mean that you're going to be less productive. Uh, I remember I used to hear people talk about. There was one guy that comes to my mind because he wanted to be a pastor so badly, and he just thought, man, if I could be the pastor, then I could show these other yob yobs how to do it, right? How
Mm-hmm.
to be how to really effectively. Now that I have disciple making under my belt, now I can really show them how a pastor's supposed to be, how a pastor's supposed to be productive and invest in his people and that kind of thing. And he crashed unbelievably because he thought it was all resided in his head, and his spine was the center of the universe. And
Yeah.
and it's not that thinking those thoughts are evil or make you a really bad person or anything like that. I think we think that. I think that's just part of the human condition. Um, oh yeah, you tried it, but you know, and it didn't work. But I didn't try it. you
Yeah.
know, I can make it happen. I can make it work. And somebody that comes with that attitude, my attitude toward that is, hey, go do it,
Knock yourself out.
knock yourself out,
Heard that one about 100,000 times from you.
knock yourself out. I mean, because you know what, you might be the guy to show us all. You might
It's
have
true.
you might have the key. You might have the thing. You might have the one missing element that we didn't see. Okay, so I'm open
That
to be
makes me
taught,
panic.
huh?
That gives me a little panic attack right there. You saying that? Yeah.
Uh, but
Panic attack for the person that thinks that,
yeah,
but I know what you mean
yeah,
because who are we to say that there might not be there's possibly a gold mine in some of these institutions that the gold mine is not, and I think it goes back to perspective.
mm,
Like for somebody in the institution that has been inundated with these truths about disciple making,
right,
as I have told several people, and one with me uh, recently, I told him, I said, dude, if you are not frustrated, I would think something's wrong with you. If you are not upset in this institutional setting with the information that you have, something's not right.
yeah,
And I think if we hold like I'm thinking about helping these guys, like how in this conversation right here, like how can we help? Because you've got two, like here's you
Hmm.
and me.
Hmm.
You've gone two completely separate paths in institutionalism,
Sure. Yeah.
but we're following one mandate that brings us together
Yeah.
like no other
Right.
mandate.
Which goes back to, okay, if you're going to be in this process, you have to give people freedom, okay? Because you you know there's some guys that I consider like really heavy hitters. I mean, they are when they talk about what they're doing with disciple making, with world impact. I feel like I'm in reverse. I'm just totally intimidated by them. I mean, because they're really knocking it out of the park. Um, but their path's not my path. Their venues, their people that they talk to are not the people I talk to. They've got their own. You know, their God's given them their own. I won't say niche, but they we're both doing the same thing, but we're in different venues. We're in different
Yeah.
cultures. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good word. I love that word.
Yeah, we're different cultures, and they can't come into mine, and I can't go into theirs. I haven't earned that right. They haven't earned the right either. So,
Correct.
because you
Well, it wouldn't work. It
right.
probably wouldn't work.
Well, they would kill you. They would kill you with their chutzpah. You know,
Yeah.
the guys that
Yeah.
are running with them are on a level of crazy that we're not used to. Um,
Yeah.
right, and crazy in a good way. But somebody who thinks that they can do a better job, the best way to find out you can't is do it. And so,
And give them an opportunity
yeah,
to try.
go ahead, no, do it. And I don't, knock yourself out is not a, well, fine kid, I hope you crash. No, it's, hey, you know, whatever God's putting on your heart, because God may be putting it on your heart, because He may want to burn that out of you, and the only way to burn it out of you is to let you go for it, let you do it, and then pick you up and go, yeah, that looked like that hurt when you hit that wall, you know.
Isn't it amazing? I know we've talked about this. I don't think it was a Herb statement. I don't remember where it came in at, but I know over the years it's been in our the conversation. We've used it in the conversation of our group of people. And you think about that idea, God never allows one thing to happen for one result.
Oh yeah.
It's always for a lot of different reasons. And so to say knock yourself out, the person that does have that mentality, which I've had that mentality before, um, and it's brutal. And what I thought God was using whatever He had given me, what I thought was going to be the result, actually ended up being about 15 or 20 other results of things I didn't even think I knew. I didn't even think I needed.
Yeah.
And I, going into it like, well, not necessarily to prove somebody wrong, but to prove something in me. And then you turn around and you're like, oh crap, I didn't even see that in me. Ooh, I didn't even realize that about me.
Yeah.
And so that's the self awareness. Dude, what if daggum institutionalism is a great place for people to become self aware
Right.
of maybe not good in them, because the institution will bring out the bad in you a lot of times.
Well,
And
it's a different attitude, you know. Um, I hope I can remember everything that you've sparked in my brain. Um, but uh, I remember I remember sitting in a meeting one time. I was at a large church, and we were in a staff meeting. My mentor my discipler had a avenue into that institution, and he was talking to the staff, and one of the staff members just blurted out, in his frustration with everything, because I think my disciple was saying, you cannot institutionalize this. If you institutionalize it, you kill it. And they were like so frustrated with that because everything they did went through the institution. And he was like, and he just blurted out, I don't understand why you can't institutionalize this. I don't get why you can't. He just blurted it out. And I remember thinking, yeah, why can't we? I don't. Why wouldn't it work? Why can't it? I think I see an avenue for it to work. And my disciple was just patient, and he was just like, you can try. Go ahead, you can try, but I'm telling you, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
And part of this, part of the disciple making process, and this is for disciples and disciplers, and when you run into this, because you're going to run into this when it's like, especially those that have been running in these circles, I'll say these believer circles, and
Yeah.
because these believer circles are bigger than just church. I mean, there's other ones, um, but when you run in these circles for a long time, and you see a lot of wasted energy, a lot of wasted time, wasted resources, and then when you see that disciple making is the only way that's going to get done, it produces a level of anger that is normal and natural. Okay, I remember somebody coming to me saying, "Bill, why is everybody so angry? Why are they angry?" And because they were seeing anger as a
Yeah.
bad thing. That's something we need to tamp down, because we don't need to be known as the angry bunch. And
Yeah.
but I told him, I said, yeah, but they've got to be angry. They need that anger. And it's a fine line you got to dance on. I mean, because you don't want to get to the point where your anger outstrips your compassion for people and your
Yeah.
tolerance for people. But it's good to be angry to the point where it says, hey, this this monstrosity, I've got to detach my success from it, because it is not going to get the job done on the scale and level that God expects. So, and that guy I was talking about, because I was dead set that disciple making was the only way to get it done, and you know, I'm not just whistling in the dark about that. It's just not my opinion. That's reality. Um, I have moved away from the institutional model, and he has entrenched himself because he's opposite. He sees disciple making as, oh, that don't work, I tried it, and institutionalism is the only way to get it done. So he leaned back into that. And will he always be there? Probably, but I mean, I can't say that 100%. I mean, the story's not over. Um, you know.
Well, I mean, you go back and you made those comments, man, and I thought of something that's brilliant. So it's not definitely not my thought. It'd be the spirit. But how often have we talked about the institution being a tool
Mm-hmm.
to get men?
Yeah.
And what if the institution is a tool to develop paradigm for the people that are in it? Because it's not that. Oh, so if you go back to me when I got fired from the second biggest church, you
Right.
were at the first in Catawba County.
That's right.
Um,
Don't forget that.
when I got handled improperly because of my big mouth and my chutzpah, um, that was where I was leaning. Was screw it all, man. I was like looking for jobs. I was doing side jobs. Have
Yeah.
a background in landscaping, and I had my own landscaping business for about 3 years before all of this happened, and I was literally going to go back into that, and then I came back in to Catawba here, literally almost 18, right at 18 years ago, and there was a wrestle then because I was already given the information of disciple making, and I had already realized that strategy is going to be a strategy that reaches the world,
Mm-hmm.
but I still thought well, I could make more of an impact in the church, like
Right.
as a pastor. And the truth of that is, you daggone right, I can make more of an impact in the church.
Right.
But what about outside? What about? And so my path in 18 years is very unique compared to other pastors, to where I have my foot in a lot of other things,
Right.
community like that. But my point is, it's not it the way that somebody's listening right now. It might just be one, but somebody's listening right now. More than likely, they're going to be listening at some point, and they're going to be thinking, "Why the hell is Derek still a pastor?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what? I don't understand why he's in it because of the way he talks about it,
Right.
and he won't even think it's the. And all I can say is, it's a great tool to hand you your butt.
Mm-hmm.
The institution has been a great tool to whip my tail, and I've seen the institutional life for the last 18 years as a wilderness journey for me.
Mm-hmm.
But praise God, I'm no longer one of the unbelieving, unfaithful people wandering through the journey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now starting to see myself as a Joshua and Caleb with a different perspective, but still walking through that wilderness with people that just don't see the way I
Right.
see. And so my goal's not necessarily to get them to see from my perspective, because I'm not God. I don't have that power, but it does give me an opportunity to have a lot more flexibility
Mm-hmm.
to reach the world, to go after the world. So I've learned how to handle it a little better, but it's a force that drives you down one. It pinholes you. The
Mm-hmm.
institution pinholes you. And the way it pinholes you is, we want you to do it like this for the sake of this.
Right.
And ultimately, you will be controlled by the institution, or you will have to learn how to give a little here or give a little there. While you might still have a foot in, you need to have the majority of what you're doing out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, of the guys you're pouring into, I've told a pastor friend of mine several times, I'm like, dude, you need to disciple somebody that's not has nothing to do with your church. Get somebody that's not going to help you one bit. Get somebody that you're not going to be able to set up in front of the people. Pour into somebody that's not going to help pad your congregation. I'm talking about that as a pastor, and I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I struggle with that, and that's one of the traps as a pastor in the disciple making.
It makes no sense. I mean, when you say it like that, because we're so geared toward, you know, the success of the institutional ministry is the success of the pastor, is the success of the body of believers. And can it be that way? It can, but
Yeah.
mostly because of the way the institution is designed, is it feeds back on itself and demands that you pay attention to it, right? Um, yeah.
So how many guys did you? So I'm going to ask you this: how many guys early on? We won't mention the church name.
Mm-hmm.
How many guys did you disciple out of that big place that we were talking about? How many guys come
Came out of that.
were yeah, yeah, and are still maybe not rolling, but are connected to a point with you, and or still maybe making disciples?
Uh, God, that's a great question.
I didn't mean to stump you with that, but
Well, you made a qualifier of how many people are still doing it.
well, I mean I don't really know any other way to qualify that, because we know one is still
Well,
seemingly doing what I do.
I qualify it. I qualify it um, in two ways. those that have been exposed to it and those that have continued in it.
Okay.
So those that have continued in it out of that one place, probably just off the top of my head, and I may be completely wrong about this. It might maybe six.
Wow. And that was a very large church
Very
that
large.
a very large group of people heard that
Now,
information because of the way it was coming out.
how many were exposed?
That's the
Now, exposed to and may still be doing it, but I don't know. Um, Probably 50,
wow.
60.
But not to mention Herb was there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole congregation was exposed to the information, but the
Yeah.
ones that I directly worked with and were up close with, I would say it'd be probably a number of 50 to 60.
Wow. Wow. So you're saying roughly 5 to 10% of those are. But
Continue.
now, what else could we say? We could ask this question, and I know you can't answer this. I'm not expecting a, but we could ask this hypothetical question, or just the question: how many of those people are still good family people, good community individuals that are still connected at a church somewhere?
Out of the
And
50 or
and
60,
yeah,
all of them.
yeah, yeah,
I'd say all of them. I'd be shocked if there was one that wasn't.
yeah. But
Now,
that's not our point.
no,
That's not our point.
no, but
That
then,
wasn't Jesus'
but
point.
but then there's probably outside of that institution. I probably have more success outside that institution than I do in it.
Mm.
So there's probably more that are continuing on that are outside of that. I mean, they weren't connected to that at all. So
But so another thing is your exposure to this truth that we clearly see in Scripture
yeah,
about disciple making came in an institutional setting.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
And it was, and I would even say it exploded in an institutional setting because a guy 5 miles away in one of the other larger Baptist churches in that area, me,
mm-hmm.
got a trickle effect
Mm-hmm.
of that from a guy that was in between you and where I was pastoring.
Right.
So again, it's not that I'm trying to make a point that the institution is somewhat, well, I guess what I'm saying is God can show up anywhere,
Sure.
and God's strategy can show up anywhere, and God's not limited to a four-wall building. He's not limited to an oak tree, which I used to know this guy and love his heart, man. I love this dude. He was full of passion, and he's an older guy, and that's where he went to church every Sunday was Oak Tree Baptist, and it was in his backyard up on the hill in the woods.
Yeah.
He took a dump on all of it, and that was years back. And I loved his passion about it. But going back to my point, God doesn't need a building
No.
to reveal Himself in this way.
Right.
Does He choose sometimes to use a building? Well, your example is very much yes.
Yeah. But I think the reason I had this view, and I like your questioning, is really brought out a different perspective I really never thought about. You know, a lot of people say, "Well, how can you turn this loose so easily? You know, how can you just let it go?" Part of it is my history with seeing ministry with my dad, but also it's because I've seen just as much success in the institution, and I've probably seen more success outside the institution. And so for me, a lot of people say bigger is better, all this other. And I like you said, I was in, it wasn't a mega church, but it was the biggest church in our county. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I had the biggest fishing pond ever. In fact, I got criticized. They said, "Why are you still in that godforsaken place. You just like fishing in a big pond, and I'm like, shut up. Uh, you know, but just because you have a big pond doesn't mean you're going to have great success either.
That's right.
So, so it just taught. I think it was part of my training for God to show me, hey, uh, I can do things in incredible ways with very little. So, uh, I think sometimes the bigger the worse. Um, from God's perspective, because when it gets bigger and better, people praise the bigger and better instead of praising God for what He did. Um, so,
Well, isn't it easy to supplement what we see God do through Scripture, which is always start small, always starts with one man, always starts with a small remnant, and it's so easy to like I said to supplement God's way of moving with man's way of moving,
right,
and of course we know what the path of man will lead to. Very very pointed Scripture. There's a way that seems right unto man, but in the end, it's the way of death.
right,
And it's not just death um, ending life. That death is a all consuming, like what he's doing, the path he's on, the people around him are leading to nothing, no production, no fruit.
mm-hmm,
Whereas you would think that one seed couldn't change the world. Why not get 500 pounds of seed?
right,
But if you're sowing in a place that the soil's not fertile, the ground's not right,
mm-hmm,
your chances might be better with the one seed than with the 500 pounds of seed.
yeah,
But we don't see it that way because we would much rather take our chances with the more than to take our chances with the little. And that's where God has, over the last couple of years, that's where He's backed me into a corner. Like a man can't do that.
right,
You can't do that. Like we've talked through these things for my benefit
mm,
over the years, and you couldn't put me in a corner. You wouldn't have put me in a
no,
corner. Not what you're, but he's put me in a corner, not like naughty corner where my nose is in a corner, but he's pushed me into a
yeah,
corner to see this different aspect of something that I'd been missing, where I was talking out of both sides of my mouth,
right,
but I really wasn't doing. And so it's like God has finally brought me. Not that all the other guys have not been from God, but like Marty,
yeah,
it's like this dude has zero chance.
yeah,
No, no, and people like literally his family looks at him,
yeah,
and yeah, they're proud, but they look at him and they're like, he gonna screw up again. And I'm like, and I want to come in beside him and be like, you better believe it, he's gonna screw up again. But I can bet my bottom dollar if he just keeps coming, just enough, X and the power of the Spirit will burn something in him that dude ain't gonna stay down long when he gets his ass knocked out.
right,
He's gonna get back up and he's gonna move again because his intention and his vision is changing. I can't do that. And so God's given me that one man now, but I've got a lot of other people around me as a pastor. I'm leading a lot of other people, but there's like one guy that I am highly intentional about right now.
yeah,
But then people would look at that on the outside and they'd be like, why are you spending time with a guy that maybe comes 50, maybe comes 30% of the time to church? Like he is not a regular attender. And I don't encourage it.
yeah,
I don't encourage it. I encourage him to listen to the messages sometimes. And sometimes he does it without me even saying, hey, did you listen to this past Sunday? Because sometimes, even in that crowd pleasing message, a disciple in the process can
oh yeah,
take something out of that. But
yeah, and that's
anyway,
another, yeah, that's another good. I mean, when you look at the benefits of the institution, I mean, there are benefits. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that it's completely worthless, because it's not. But like I said before, the resources we're putting into it, what you're putting into it and what you're getting out of it is, I mean, you're not multiplying, you know, the efforts.
Not even adding sometimes. There's not even addition.
But they exist. They do exist. They need to exist. In our culture, they have to exist, because if you got rid of every institutional church right now at the click of a finger or a snap of a finger, oh yeah, it'd be devastating. It would be devastating, because a
Which
lot.
was close during COVID. I mean, it was
Yeah,
close
yeah.
to seeing that.
But what did COVID reveal? It revealed so much, and people didn't want to look at it, man. They did not want to look at it, because there was people that, they didn't like COVID, but as far as churches were concerned, they were happy about COVID, because they've been wanting to figure out how to quit going for a long time. But but they didn't want to
Well,
be embarrassed. They didn't want to have the stigma of
yeah,
stop going to church, and it's so funny. And when people, I remember talking to Rummage Man, when it was like, people are saying, I don't want to come back. I don't want.
yeah,
I don't want to start Sunday school back up. But for somebody who's trained to hear, if they're in the process and are being trained to hear and capture information, then Sunday school becomes very beneficial. The
yeah,
Sunday
yeah.
morning service becomes very beneficial. It's curriculum, it's free training.
Right, right.
But to the people that are just slubbing back and forth to the service, it's really a pain in the ass. Um,
That's true.
and oh, something happened and the preacher didn't get to preach, and what a great service. They
Yeah,
didn't have.
yeah. It was only 35 minutes instead of an hour and 35 minutes because he
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah,
he didn't preach. He
yeah.
didn't make it to church. He got flu that morning at 9 o'clock and didn't have time to get somebody else. So let's just come together, sing and pray, go home. Hallelujah.
Man, best service in a long time.
Yeah. Oh, and that makes for a good statement here. Coming from a pastor of many years, and uh, I would say that there are a lot of pastors that really enjoy COVID.
Yeah.
I would go out on a limb as a pastor and say the same thing I said to Sonny last week. I miss those days,
Mm.
and I would never want something like that to happen again because of the society part of it.
Yeah, it was devastating.
But I miss that time, and I look back over that, and there ain't a single time that I could say that I felt like I wasted opportunities. I felt like, Darren, I was more intentional at that time in those roughly, we'll say 6 to 8 months that you were pretty much battling. Do we close? What do we do about here? We need to get disinfectants. We need to do. And man, it was like, dude, I didn't miss a beat. I
Mm.
still discipling. I still meeting with people. I was still engaging in
Yeah.
in my life with Christ. Nothing changed with me, but I was sitting there looking around and thinking, institutionalism is done. Like, what are these people going to do now that they don't have a man to stand up in front of them every? Well, they revert back to doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Virtual became a reality, and now we've got more people that watch on Sunday mornings and on Facebook than we have that show up in the pulpit. And I'm fine with that. We were set up before COVID started, so we were already ready, and we had several churches that called me wanting to use our Proclaim program that we use, and we set a couple of the churches up because again, it goes back to I think rallying the troops and coming back around. to what I think our conversation is today is if you're in it and you feel like you need to fight for some things, if you're in the system, if you're a pastor, if you're a church leader, if you're just a Sunday school attender and a Sunday morning attender, if God's saying to get a little bit of chutzpah, get a little bit of passion to push some of these institutional things that come against what you're learning as a disciple from the scripture, man, go at it. Push.
Yeah.
Say it wrong. Be zealous and realize that that dagger isn't for the person in front of you. It's probably for you.
Right.
But go after it, and then at times God might be saying you need to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that happen just last week in my life personally.
Right.
In the institution, I was getting frustrated, and God's like, He said, "You've been here umpteen times, and you're back at the same place with your frustration. Do you want to leave?" And I'm like, "Well, kinda." Well, it ain't changed. The same that I was saying, kinda, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, what do I do? And God's like, you wait. You put up with this crap until I tell you to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, so stop looking at the system because it gets you off track.
Yeah.
And look at the people.
Yeah.
And I see the system and I get ticked off. I see what it does to people. I see what it doesn't do for people, but they claim it does. And then God says, your vision's off again because my heart's not on the system. My heart's on the people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so dang elementary, Lord. And that's what I needed to hear is that had that reminder.
Right. Right. And you bring a really good point, and that is that when if you get so mad at the thing that you want to blow it up, you got to remember there's individuals that's going to be affected by that,
Yeah.
and what are they going to do? Um, just like somebody said, well, we need to do things differently. Yeah, but what if even a small, say a church of 100 in attendance, okay, or 50, even 50 in attendance, what would happen if they all turned around at that time and decided they wanted to be discipled? You'd be so overwhelmed.
Oh, God.
You couldn't handle it, and then it becomes um, the latest fad, and then it
Yeah.
dilutes it,
Yeah.
and then pretty soon then you get all these voices because everybody has, like, I don't know how many times I run into people that say, well, this is what I think a disciple is. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm great that you think that, but that that don't match what Jesus did, and then they'll say, well, I think it could happen this way. Well, okay, we'll go for it. you know Try it out, see what happens,
Yeah.
and we'll see who produces what. um, but I have no I have no delusion that if I was running the thing that I would do any better. Okay, so like some people say, well, since you got all the knowledge there, why don't you jump in there and see what you could do? And I'm like, I don't think I could run it. I don't know that I would survive it. I
Yeah.
think my zeal and desire to fix things, I would put so much effort into that thing that I think I would get off.
Yeah. That's it. That's where I was. That's you make that statement, and that's where I was again last week. Exactly what you just said, and I couldn't articulate it
Yeah,
because I'm a fixer.
yeah,
And when I see stuff broken, and I suck at fixing things because I'm not handy like that. But when I see brokenness in people, I'm immediately attracted. And when I see brokenness in a system that I understand,
mm,
and so what I was doing and attempting to do was straighten out the system. And every time you straighten out the system, you got to try to straighten out somebody.
oh my God,
And when you try to straighten out somebody, immediately what you have is a fight on your hand.
and it's so stupid. I mean, how many times, and I'm seeing a scenario play out right now with a friend of mine, and it starts out with this little confrontation, and then
Mm.
it goes here, then it goes there, then it goes here, then it goes there, then it begins to grow and swell, and pretty soon it's this big brouhaha over stupid stuff, dumb
Yep.
stuff, and now you're fighting for the life of the institution based off somebody couldn't control their tongue because somebody couldn't control what they said, and now the institution is, and everybody in it is threatened with annihilation. We're gonna carpet bomb this sucker, and
Yeah. And then hell becomes the title of the message for
yeah,
for the next 4 weeks.
sprinkle some napalm on there and take care of take care of whatever's left.
Yeah.
Um, Gee whiz. So yes, we talk a lot about the institution, but it's usually because,
Our subject again.
but well, that's become the subject, And I'm glad I got to clarify that I have no hatred toward it. Just like
Yeah.
I have no hatred. Uh, okay, so you see somebody nailing with a hammer, right? They got a hammer and nail, and they're nailing, and they slip and they hit their thumb. Okay, right? I've seen people chuck the hammer. What did the hammer do?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you could chuck the hammer, but the hammer didn't hit your finger, right?
Yeah.
You hit it, you big knob, right? And
The
so,
golf clubs. And you see the golf clubs go into the pond. Yeah.
yeah, or they bend it. I love that. I love that one guy that did a putt, and it looked like it was going to rim out, and he bent it, and then it rimmed back around and went in, and he it already
I've seen
he
that.
already bent
That's
his
funny.
he already bent his putter, and he was like, but being angry at the putter, being angry at the hammer, being angry at any tool is makes about as much sense as being angry at the institution.
That's good. Good statement.
Because it's inanimate.
Yeah.
The institution
So
itself is inanimate.
let me ask you this. Let me ask. So, what would you say to a person like me?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's not a lot, but there ain't a lot. But what would you say to a church leader,
Yeah.
not just pastor, but deacon, somebody that has a responsibility? What would you say to them that if
Mm-hmm.
you're looking in
Yeah.
as a impactor of this person.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking into their life and their system, and you
Right.
see the system chewing them up and spitting them out.
Right.
What would you say? How would you handle that?
Okay. I would just point out, just like I just did, that the system itself, and I'm not talking about people. I'm not talking about when I talk about the church institution is not the same as the church the people. It's just not the same. So I would help them to disconnect the institution as a system, disconnect that in their mind from the people. Okay, and that would be the first step, which is really the hardest one, because we have ingrained that so much into people that it's so hard to get out. Usually, you have to get so frustrated with it, but also um, don't connect your success to that. Don't
Mm,
gauge your success, whether or not you're a good disciple maker or not, on whether or not that institution is successful or not. The
yeah,
two are not
yeah.
connected.
No, I can attest to that.
They're not connected. So if once you can disconnect my success from that, then I can evaluate what I'm doing, and then it
Mm,
doesn't have to happen in that, right? Now it can happen anywhere. It can happen, somebody that I interact with at Little League, and they go to some other church way down the road, or institution down the road. That's fine. It makes no difference because that's not how you gauge success. Whether how many people you corral in your little area, right?
That's right.
So what? So and once you do that, all that, a lot of it will go away. A lot of the frustration will go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, I would also point out there's qualities that it can do. There's certain things it can do and certain things it can't do. Stop expecting it to do what it can't do, and stop.
What's some of the things that it can't do?
It cannot disciple. It cannot. It won't. And it will not. It does not care outside of itself. Right. Its survival is key. You know, if somebody comes up against it, if somebody speaks out against it, just like we are right now, anybody that's highly institutionalized would want to find us and shut us up and kill us because they would say
Sounds like
oh
sounds like politics in the United States right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I can't even let you say that. I can't even let you interject that idea into people's heads
Yeah.
because that's how fragile it is. It's super super fragile. Like
And the survival is built on one man usually,
yeah,
because in the survival is we succeed if we have the right man in the pulpit.
right.
And then the question is what's the right man? Who is it? But again, to go back to your point is that's one of the things it can't do
Hmm.
is it can't survive without people and their money.
Yeah, yeah,
It can't survive without a holy huddle.
right. Well, somebody says, "Oh, uh, we don't need money. We don't count on money to survive." Really? Stop taking offering
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. Yeah. Go back to COVID, and what did you hear most people say?
Yeah,
And what are a lot of churches still reeling from?
yeah. They got kicked in the teeth, dude, financially.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you know, do you need money? I guess. I mean, yeah, you need money to survive. Even Jesus needed money. He got support from a group that was called the women, right? They supported him out of their resources. So, even Jesus needed money on some level, right? Uh, but was money the main key? No, not at all. It was much deeper than that. It was that something that was from God, that plan, that idea of reproduction. Just like you populate the world, that's how you're going to impact the world, through reproduction. We didn't populate the world through institutionalism, through orphanages. Sorry.
We'll go back to a little bit of biblical study, which we don't do. We just conversate, but it's okay. We might do it one day. And I didn't realize this till a couple years ago, but in Matthew 6, where Jesus says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you." The real idea of chapter 6 is built around it's the idea of worry, but it's built around money.
Mm,
It's built around this idea of it's not that money is evil, but the love of the money
right.
is what is the root cause of our worry, of our bickering,
Right.
of our societal downfall. Really, and our society's downfall is usually due to control or finances. But you go back and you look at what Jesus is saying in that text, and what Jesus is saying is there's something else to set your eyes on.
Right.
Yes, money in and of itself is not evil,
Mm-mm.
but it's the way mankind uses money, which is usually to build its own system, because you can't tell me they didn't need money to build the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Back in Nimrod,
Yeah.
Genesis 9 and 10, they needed money. They needed the resources of the world. They needed this stuff. And you can't tell me there wasn't an evil intention. And I think Jesus is playing off of that and telling us that he's not saying, hey, he's not saying money is evil. He's saying the way that you use the money
Right.
is what can be potentially the evil root. And so, how do a lot of institutions use their resources? Well, it depends on how many's coming. It depends on what they think they need to make an impact. And what will they do? They will build a new building.
Yep.
They will build a bigger building. We will go higher. We will go bigger. We will go further.
Yeah.
Not that that's wrong. But in every single freaking brick that's laid, how many people within 30 miles of your institution are struggling to eat one daggum, struggling to find a loaf of bread and some meat and mayonnaise just to make a sandwich?
Yeah.
And I know that's minimal, but
Right.
and I'm not saying that Catawba Baptist does it great because we still struggle, but
Right.
we're sitting here in a 150-year-old building, and I've got zero desire to build anything else. I got zero desire for anything new because I don't want to have nothing to do with that because I'm not here to build it bigger and to build it better.
Right.
And that's the difference between me and other people.
Well,
But
I was in a conversation. I was in a meeting one time where a pastor said this. He said that he called it the bonsai model, bonsai tree, and he said the way that they, a bonsai tree is just a regular tree, but why is it so tiny? Is because they keep the container small. Okay, so he said, in ministry, there's the 80-20 rule, which is when you get to 80% capacity, you're really at 100% because nobody will come, and fill up that extra 20% because it's too uncomfortable, too crowded, right? And I'm thinking, that's how you gauge success.
yeah, that's right.
You just tipped your hand into how you gauge success. You could have 100% people hanging out the windows, and that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean you have anything. It just means you have a lot of people.
That's right.
And as long as we're gauging, and that's another thing I would tell people, is stop gauging your success of how many people you have in the thing. I mean, it doesn't just.
How many you have in your Sunday school? How many you have in your church as a pastor? Of course,
Yeah, I mean,
I had some. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. You had some what?
Just I had a interesting conversation after my message on Sunday, and it was like one of them gravel sandwiches I was feeding people. It just come out like I don't know. It was just I felt a little bit obligated on that one,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to be obligated when you stand up to preach the word. And it was me. It wasn't anybody. It wasn't anybody's fault. But after it was over, um, usually I never ask people ever. What do you think about that? Every now and then I'll ask my wife because I want to argue. But um, I had a guy come. I had a guy come up to me. My wife loves a good argument with me, but I had a good friend of mine, a guy I have discipled for years, come up to me and he said, "I just want to tell you," he said, "that was powerful." And I'm like, and I think I even told him, I said, "Dude, that come out like a gravel sandwich. I hate to see how y'all took it." And I said, and then I asked the genius question, "Well, what did you think was powerful?"
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with my information, nothing to do with the text itself. It's what I said at the end. Not scripted, just kind of come out. I don't know why. And I made some kind of. He said it was the last 10 minutes of it, and he said what impacted him was when I said due to another death that we've recently had in our church, and he made the comment. He said when you made the comment that it brings joy to your heart when somebody goes after somebody hurting and the pastor don't have to call them and ask them to do it.
Mm.
And that's what I was talking about because there's not a small group of people ministering now. There's a lot larger group of people. And when I say ministering, no, it's not disciple making. but it is far greater than what it was 18 years ago at Catawba Baptist. There's a lot more people getting their hands dirty. There's a lot more people that's reaching out
Right.
and loving on
Right.
the hurting, and the pastor's not standing up preaching at them about how bad they've been or how much better they need to be. And however he took that was encouraging, and he does see, he understands these. So I would even offer that as a successful to a point, a success in an institutional setting
Yeah.
is when the pastor and 20% aren't the ones doing everything. That percentage of people just doing
Hmm.
is growing, and that I personally would say, from a pastor standpoint, I look at that and I'm like, hallelujah, Jesus,
Yeah.
because this thing ain't going to be done with one man. This thing's not going to be, people aren't going to be cared for if it's just the pastors are the ones visiting. If it's just the deacons that are the ones, it takes everybody. And then you carry that same mentality into disciple making, not that it's going to happen in the institution,
Hmm.
but you carry that same mentality that I am fully training Marty Weinbarger to do exactly what I do, to be exactly like me,
Hmm.
according to the scriptures that Jesus is ultimately the Lord, and I'm pointing to him as the Lord and King. But you're going to do just like me,
Hmm.
and I expect you to do better. And guess what that means? It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stand up in the pulpit, because that's an uncommon goal.
Right.
Not many people are going to get that.
Yeah.
But the way you're intentional with people, the way you're at work and you're impacting them no matter where you're at and what situation's going on, the fact that you're looking beyond yourself, that's a huge part of disciple making, is just turning somebody's perspective away from what's going on. I don't know why. It's me, it's me, it's me, it's me. And turning them outward. And then you show them the world by taking them on a trip,
Yeah.
or you show them the world by letting them see that it's up to you to bring this message, to bring this idea, to bring this truth, this gospel. Your responsibility.
Yeah.
I went all around for that one, but
No, no, no. But it's that is the one encouraging thing. A pastor who is making disciples in the way that he's not necessarily just trying to benefit his church. That's kind of like the bleed over, where because you're looking at people saying, well, you can be just as good as I can. You can do just as much as I can. And they start saying, hey, you know what? I'm starting to believe this guy. I can minister. I can't. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, he's not as brilliant as I thought he was. He's not as he's just, oh gosh, the pastor has blood in his veins, and he gets hungry, and he has to go take a squat every once in a while.
well, I was gonna say he's got the poop.
Yeah, he's got uh and instead of the pastor having to get up and say, why don't you get off your lazy asses and do something, you know where it bring once you have freedom, it's easy to give freedom.
That's right.
So once you get free from the institution, it's easy to give people freedom from the institution.
Well, I'll say this to you, Bill. I appreciate you giving me freedom, brother,
Oh yeah.
because like you said, their freedom's contagious.
Mm,
Freedom is contagious in a person that houses the Holy Spirit,
mm,
because I think the freedom is dangerous to the system.
yeah. Hmm.
Freedom is dangerous to the system. Freedom to think for yourself.
Yeah.
Freedom to go beyond what the man in the pulpit's always saying. And I got people still to this day. I've got one that's about to show up that does not like that kind of freedom,
Mm,
because it's not safe.
right. Yeah,
It's not
I
safe.
mean,
What are you doing to people?
what
Got to
if people
corral them.
what if people go off in wrong directions? Oh, you gonna stop them? You gonna stop
Yeah,
them from going wrong directions?
yeah,
Okay, okay, Skippy.
yeah. Yeah, well, let's pull the sheet back on this even before they actually start going off in the wrong direction, and see what was really in their heart before. And of course that's the problem is it's not that I don't give 3 scoops of monkey dung. That's not the point. It's not that I don't care.
Right.
But really the point is I don't care
Right. Right.
because I'm not living for a paycheck.
Right.
I'm not living for a number increase
Right.
as a pastor. Even if I'm not a pastor,
Yeah.
I'm not living for the moment that I get to preach a message or teach a message. That it's like I'm not living for the things that are only going to benefit me.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of the difference in where I was to where I am and to where I'm leading other people now.
Right.
And it's scary, man.
Right. Well, to add on to your, what would you tell somebody that is in the institution? That would be the next thing I would probably tell them is, you got to be set free from it, but you got to set other people free as well from performing for you, or them doing what you want them to do, or what you expect them to do. Um, once somebody sees once somebody sees the benefit of the disciple making process and the world impact that it culminates into, they'll run without you. So it's not that you got to put a mandate on them and put thumb screws on them, but let them be like, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I don't like reading my Bible, you know and I've told them, hey, I'd quit. If I was you, I'd quit because it looks like it's killing you. What do you? I mean, and people just look at me like, you told people not to read the Bible. Yeah, I mean, they don't want to read it anyway. What are they getting out of it? Nothing.
Yeah,
But once you get somebody on this path, you can't keep them out of the Bible.
that's right.
I mean, they have to be in it. They have to be studying it, and just like these Bible studies that we conduct, or people that we rub up against and we share truth with, we're giving them that little bit of bread on their tongue to see if we can entice them, not trick them, not manipulate them, but just hey, you ever try this? You ever try this? You're like, hey, that's pretty good. Where'd you get that?
Yeah,
I made it myself.
yeah, yeah. Come on, and I'll,
I
I'll
did.
show you where I found it.
I didn't invent the ingredients, but I sure did put it together. You know. Uh,
Well, and I think that goes back to something that we've said a lot over the last couple of conversations is, it really is rigged.
mm-hmm.
And the beautiful thing about the way God's rigged it is that the revelation, the paradigm change can come anywhere. Like it's so rigged that if somebody like me can see it, if somebody like you can see it um, in the middle of uh, a huge empire,
Mm-hmm.
I could say institution,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of even our own desire to be a part of that, and maybe even if not to lead it, to want something similar, it's still rigged.
Yeah.
And the challenge with it being rigged is we've got to set people up for God to take advantage of them.
Right.
And when I say God to take advantage, it's what we're trying to do in this process is so set people up that they can succeed,
Mm-hmm.
and to set them up to a point that where we bring them here by what our intention is with them, with information, with what our intention is with them for their life, and what we see God to see in them, that literally God just comes in and takes advantage of what we've trained and are training them to be. And then we're like, I mean, the whole time it's like you can't look back on anything that's happened in the last 20 plus years and say that God wasn't in it. I mean, you can look back and see the enemy's hand, absolutely.
Sure.
But even if you go back and pull from Joseph's conversation when his brothers intended to kill him, And he said, what the enemy meant for evil, God has destined for good.
Yeah.
I think that's rigged.
Yeah.
And we don't see that because a lot of times the reason we don't see that God has set this thing up so that others will be blessed
Hmm.
is because we're too busy trying to get the blessing. We're too busy trying to be the ones that
Right.
all get to ourselves.
Well, we want to see, we want to see the result. We want to see the benefit, right? And
Yeah.
just like stories like Joseph, like Moses, I was thinking earlier when we were talking, something you'd said had sparked my brain about it, but I was thinking, Moses, when he went back to Egypt, he was probably 80 years old.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
so from the time God saw and heard his people
Woo.
crying out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
baby was born.
Yeah.
But there was of 80
I
years
mean,
of
develop.
slavery
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hurting and pain and people crying out. I mean, the crying out didn't just happen there and then stop until Moses showed up. No, the crying out continued. They're crying out and God says, "Okay, I'm going to answer your prayer. I'm going to raise up a Moses." And they're thinking, "Okay, fantastic." And they're looking for instant relief. No, it was 80 more years of
Two generations.
of
Three. That would
mourning,
be. Yeah, that would be a lot of generations died without seeing the promise
of
come to fruition.
people hurting, people getting killed, people being
Uh,
taken advantage
uh,
of,
yeah.
rapings, murders. That God just, as it went on, and then even when Moses showed up, it did not produce instant relief. In fact, it got made it worse. It got worse. So so okay,
Can
so
we say hallelujah?
so now we think when we pray, God release, deliver, give me peace. He goes, okay, I'm going to answer that prayer.
Yeah.
What happened? God's not answering my prayer. No, He answered it. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen in the way you. And it's the same way with this. You know, is God going to redeem the institution? Doubtful. Doubtful. Because it's not a thing. I mean, it's not a person. It's a thing. That's my point. Is He going to redeem the people out of that? Yes, absolutely. But it may
Well, and
take
it's
some
not a
time.
model. Huh.
It may take some time.
Well, and it's not a, it's, and I would even go as far as to say it's not a model that God cares for.
Mm.
I mean, and then you'd be like, well, that's harsh. It's not a model that God cares for. And the reason is usually because of what ends up being promoted and what ends up being produced. And the model is usually geared to put one man up on top
Right.
or a group of people up on top while the others are still in injustice,
Right.
are still in their broken state. However, what we say and what we teach is there is one model that God is highly fond of,
Sure.
greatly fond of, and that is the model of disciple making, and that is the model of pouring your life into one person as if you're pouring your life into the world.
Right. Wow. What you just said. That's a big
And
statement.
yeah, and that's where it's changed for me is and then I'm gonna be done after this.
Okay.
But I made the statement to one of the guys that's walking with me just the other day, and I don't know how it sat with him. I'm not going to answer for him. I know how he responded, but I told him I said, man, you got to learn how to please the crowd. And I said, and in pleasing the crowd, you're not playing games. You're
Right.
giving them exactly what they want. You're feeding them just enough bread to realize that that bread is definitely going to get them to turn and come back for more. Same thing they did with Jesus the next day because they came back to make him king.
Yeah.
The problem's going to be, are you going to let him make you king?
Mm.
And then the other idea is what if it keeps happening over and over and over and they just keep coming back for bread? Again, you cannot change somebody's paradigm to see that they need a life not about eating bread, but they need to be the ones that take in the loaf, Jesus himself, and give away like the disciples were distributing that day. So in the institutional setting, if there is anybody that's still listening, I would say, even with the question that I asked you, Bill, like, what's one thing you would tell somebody that's in the institution, and I would answer that after listening to what you said. I would say one of the ways that I've learned to do it is to give the crowd what they want.
Yeah.
Give them what they want, and don't wrestle with them,
Right.
because this mob. That's why Jesus sent his disciples out into the boat and he hurried off into the mountaintop in John 6. It's because they wanted to make him king, and that wasn't something he came to be.
Yeah.
And I didn't come to be a king, but I could
Yeah.
be a king,
Yeah.
and I fight that.
And he didn't want his men getting duped and going, well, heck yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, they would.
and get caught up in the with the crowd, and he would have lost them
Yeah,
in their zeal to make him king. They would have been like, man, that sounds like a fantastic idea. Let's do that. And Jesus is like, it's safer for you in the middle of a storm about to drown than it
yeah,
is to be on
there
the
it is.
shore
Yeah,
going,
the
make him
safest
king,
place.
make him king.
Yeah, safest place was in the. Even if they were straining at the oars, the safest place was in that storm.
Tortured, it says.
Yeah,
Tortured. Not
yeah.
just, it wasn't just an inconvenience or uncomfortableness. It was torture. So,
And the torment of dying mixed with the torment of, dang, it was a lot safer over there on the shore with them people. They were cheering for us, Jesus.
yeah.
You can just I mean, it's like rock star performance and the encore. And they're like, what the hell? Why'd you walk off from the encore? So maybe one thing we have to learn to do is, or me personally, one thing as religious leaders, one thing as individuals is we have to learn how to be like Jesus and protect our people at
Yeah.
times, our the guys that have submitted to us
Mm-hmm.
and entrusted their life with us, that
Yeah.
we're you and I'm looking at some guys now that I poured a lot of time into that are still connected here, and I did a poor job of protecting them from the system. If anything, I brought them into the system, and now I'm looking at the system and it is chewing them up because there's nothing outside.
Yeah.
They're not building anybody outside. And that makes the imprisonment of the system even worse.
Mm. Yeah.
And I've got that just gives me some. See, I told you these conversations just for us, so that was all for me. So anyway,
I mean,
I'm kidding.
my,
I'm
my
kidding.
my
Man.
spine's the center of the universe. I mean, everything
Yeah,
revolves around me anyway.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
sure, sure. Uh,
That's good, man. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know how many people will listen, but
uh,
um, I
it's
enjoy it, man.
yeah, it's for who it is, and like again, I've already said it, but I'm really glad we really took the time to really show what we're that we have no animosity, that we don't have no hatred. I mean, if somebody says, "Oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that," and I'll be like, "Hey, that sounds fantastic." You never get any
Yeah,
criticism from me, but the only time you would get criticism from me is if you said that you can make disciples through the institution. Now I'm going to fight you to the floor,
yeah,
and that's it. I mean, that's the only time I'll fight you is when you say, "Hey, we can make disciples out of this thing." Um, I don't know why you couldn't, but we can. Um, I'll be like, okay, now you've thrown down the gauntlet, and we're about to tussle. So,
yeah. Let's see what you've produced compared to
oh yeah, I'm gonna get brutal
what.
then. I'm gonna get really
Uh,
brutal, and that's
yeah,
not with a smile on my face necessarily.
yeah,
It's it's just it's because it has to happen, especially if somebody's standing there that I'm working with or investing in. then I definitely got
Yeah,
to.
yeah. And then that's the protection.
Yeah,
That's the protection
yeah,
of the Jesus would have done the same and did do the
yeah.
same thing.
All right, bro. Well,
That's
anything else?
good, man.
You want to finish anything out, or are you good?
I'm good. I feel like we need to pray. No, I'm kidding. That's so that's so sacrilegious, man.
May the Lord,
Yeah.
may the Lord give you.
Yeah, the whole Spock, the Vulcan,
No, well, that's
yeah,
the high priestly prayer.
there,
Yeah,
there,
that's what the rabbi would do over the.
and do you know that's why Spock did it?
Yeah, yeah, he was Jewish.
Spock's a Jew. He
Yeah,
was
yeah,
Jewish, and that's what that came
yeah,
from.
yeah.
I
He's
was
he
doing,
peaked it. He
yeah,
peaked up. Yeah.
yeah, and they would almost make when they would do it. It was like they would make the whatever that we need Dillingham for all that
Well, that's
information.
it's the Jewish alphabet for God. It's Yahweh.
Yaha, Yaha, yeah,
Yeah,
Yavaha, Yahava, yeah, what however you
yeah,
say that.
yeah,
God,
yeah. Anyway,
hopefully you've already stopped that.
no, I
Oh, we
haven't.
did.
Just looks
Well,
stupid. Just looks stupid. All right, brother. See
all
you.
right, man. See you, man.